In 1991, 3 rural families walked into church one Sunday morning and were never seen again. No goodbye, no bodies, no trace. For 18 years, the town whispered their names in silence, until one stormy afternoon, the old priest unlocked a forgotten door beneath the chapel ... and found something no one was ever meant to see. What happened to those families? Wasn't an accident, and what's worse, it might not be over. The bells rang through Mill Creek like they always did on a Sunday morning, calm, precise, and hollow. They echoed off the tall pines and sloped hills, spilling into the valley where the town of Bower Hollow sat quietly among the wheat fields. Folks here didn't need a clock to know the time. When Father Holden rang the bell, it was 9:45. Church started at 10 sharp. That Sunday, June 9th, 1991, started like any other. The sun was warm, the air smelled of honeysuckle and dust, and the gravel crunched the same under old truck tires pulling. Into the church lot, 3 families, neighbors, friends, and regulars at St. Luke's arrived just like they always did. The Dunns, the Harveys, and the Molsons. The Dunns came in their green Chevy Suburban Bill, a big-shouldered farmer with thick hands and a quiet voice, his wife Lorraine, and their little boy Nate, barely 7. They always sat 3rd row from the front, left side. The Harveys rolled in 5 minutes later. Len, who ran the grain mill, and his wife Ruth, who taught Sunday school. Their teenage daughter Carla came reluctantly, as most 17-year-olds did, earbuds still in, gum hidden. In her cheek, pink scrunchie around her wrist. She didn't say much, but she was polite. The Molsons were last, pulling in just as the first hymn started. Darla's loud laugh could be heard before the car door even shut. She was always late, always full of stories, dragging her husband Neil and their quiet son Levi behind her like laundry on a line. Levi was 10 and carried a little composition notebook everywhere, drawing things he saw in the woods behind their house. They sat through the service like everyone else. They sang, they prayed, and when Father Holden read from the Gospel of Matthew, they bowed their heads. He remembered because Darla had sneezed twice, and the whole row giggled. Levi had drawn a stick figure angel in his notebook and passed it to Carla behind their parents' backs. After communion, there was coffee in the rec hall. The kids ran outside with butter cookies in hand. Nate and Levi climbed the hill behind the church to look for salamanders near the old stump. Carla sat on the church steps with her Walkman and flipped through a battered 17 magazine. The parents talked about the heat, the rain they hoped would come, and the fair coming to Meadow County next month. By noon, they were gone. The Dunns, Harveys, and Molsons all said goodbye, got into their cars, and pulled away down the winding country road that led home. No one thought twice. Not even when their cars never passed the county gas station 10 minutes away. Not when they didn't show up to the PTA meeting that Tuesday. Not even when Bill Dunn didn't make it to pick up feed at McAllister's on Wednesday. It was Thursday when folks started asking questions. Deputy Mark Hensley was the first to drive out. He was young then, maybe 25, new to the area and not yet hardened by the small-town silences people keep. He went to the Dunn place first. The mailbox still had Tuesday's paper sticking out of it, soft with dew. Their chickens clucked in the coop, hungry. The house looked undisturbed, but there was no truck in the driveway. The Harveys' place was next. The mill was closed. The porch swing creaked in the breeze. Their family dog, an old golden retriever named Buddy, was pacing along the fence, tail down, thirsty. The Molsons' house was quiet too. A pie dish sat on the windowsill with flies buzzing. No car, no signs of struggle, no signs of anything. 3 houses, all empty. All 6 people gone. By Friday, the sheriff had the state involved. Posters went up with photos of each family. The local paper ran the headline, 3 families missing. It's like they vanished, says neighbor. Father Holden tried to keep the town calm. He gave a sermon that Sunday about job and patience and trusting the Lord. But people were scared. In a town where everybody knew everybody, 6 people don't just disappear. Rumors started. Some said, the families left together. Maybe they were in trouble. Maybe they owed someone. Others whispered about cults, about tunnels, about something under the church. Carla's best friend Jenny claimed she saw her that Monday near Miller's Creek gas station. But the cameras were old, grainy, and no one could confirm it. Then came the strange part. All 3 homes had been locked from the inside. No signs of break-in. No signs of hasty packing or departure. Wallets, shoes, house keys still inside. Even Levi's drawing book was on his nightstand. Nothing made sense. The FBI came. They brought dogs, maps, helicopters. They searched the woods, the ravines, even the old well behind the church. Nothing. The only oddity they found? A small, rotted, wooden box in the roots of a sycamore tree near the church hill. Inside, 3 pebbles. 1 white, 1 black. No one knew what it meant. Maybe a prank. Maybe not. By fall, the case went cold. People moved on. Some left town. Others buried the unease under Sunday potlucks and high school football. Father Holden kept preaching, kept ringing the bell. The rec hall stayed open. But the 3rd row left. Side was always empty. Every June, flowers were left anonymously on the church steps, 3 small bouquets tied with string. No name, no note. Then came June 2009. 18 years had passed. Father Holden was old now. His hands trembled a bit when he lifted the chalice. His sermons were shorter. But he still rang the bell. Still watched the wind in the wheat from the rectory window. On a Tuesday afternoon, as the summer heat began to rise, a storm rolled in. The sky turned slate gray. Thunder cracked in the distance. Power went out across half the town. When the lights flickered back on that evening, something odd happened. The basement door of the church, the one behind the storage closet under the pulpit, was found unlocked. It hadn't been opened in decades. No one even had the key anymore. The hinges were rusted, the handle stiff. But now it stood ajar, just slightly, as if someone had been inside, or wanted someone to come in. Father Holden stood there a long time. He didn't move, just stared at the gap, the old dark stairs below, and whispered, "Lord, have mercy." And then, very slowly, he lit a candle and descended. The room below, the stairs creaked beneath Father Holden's feet as he descended, candle flickering in the still air. Dust swirled like tiny spirits, dancing through the beam of light. The deeper he went, the more the church above seemed to fade, like he was crossing a threshold, not just into the basement, but into a memory sealed away for too long. He hadn't been down here in years, maybe 30, maybe more. The old route cellar had been sealed sometime in the 70s after they built the rec hall, and nobody had a reason to go down there anymore. The stairs led to a narrow stone passage, the air cool, dry, and strangely untouched. When his leather solace touched the stone floor, he saw it, a door at the end of the passage. It hadn't been there before. He was sure of it. The wall had once been solid brick. He remembered sealing it with his own hands when termites had gotten into the beams. But now there was a door, wooden, painted a dull gray. No knob, no latch, just there. The candle trembled in his hand. He approached. Slowly, heart beating faster than it had in years. On the surface of the door, faint shapes were carved into the paint, almost invisible unless the light hit them just right. 3 symbols, a white circle, a red triangle, a black square dot, just like the stones in the box found under the sycamore tree all those years ago. He reached out and pressed his palm to the door. It opened with a low groan, the hinges grinding against years of disuse, or maybe years of secrecy. Inside was a room, small, square, cold. Stone walls on all sides, no windows, no light. And in the middle, a table, a wooden one, old, scarred, and stained. On it lay a single item, a child's drawing book. It was Levi Molson's. Father Holden recognized it instantly. The scuffed blue cover, the graphite smudges, the frayed binding. He had seen that boy clutch it week after week, scribbling dragons, trees, and stick figures. He opened it. The first few pages were just as he remembered, playful sketches, forests, his mother laughing, a drawing of Carla Harvey with "Carla is cool" written in big block letters. Then the drawings changed. They got darker. One showed 3 houses blacked out, with no doors. Another showed stick figures floating above a hole, as if falling. Then came a page that made Father Holden's knees tremble. It was a drawing of St. Luke's Church, detailed, precise, but under the church, instead of a basement, was a large pit filled with scribbled shapes. At the center of the pit, a man with a candle, just like the one Holden now held, and written at the bottom, in a child's hand. He goes down to open it. "We're still here." He dropped the book. By the next morning, Father Holden had sealed the basement door again, this time with nails, bolts, and prayer. He said nothing to the parishioners, not yet. Who would believe him? That after 18 years, a notebook had appeared in a hidden room that didn't used to exist? But something had changed. That Sunday, as he stood at the pulpit to begin his sermon, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Third row, left side, where the Duns used to sit, a single slip of paper rested on the empty pew. He walked down after the service, heart pounding, and picked it up. It was a torn page from Levi's drawing book. On it, 3 simple stick figures holding hands in front of a black hole. Written in the same child's handwriting, "We're waiting." Sheriff Laramie wasn't the type to believe in ghosts or hidden doors, but when Father Holden called him in private, he came. The sheriff was in his 50s now, slower, grayer, but still grounded. He had been a deputy back in '91, part of the original investigation. He hadn't thought about the case in years, but when the priest's voice cracked over the phone, he knew something was different this time. He came that afternoon with a flashlight and a notebook. They'd pried open the basement door together. The passage was still there, but the gray door at the end was gone, just a blank brick wall, like it had never existed. The sheriff laughed nervously. "Are you sure you didn't imagine it? Maybe an old wine cellar door or something." Holden didn't answer. Instead, he handed Laramie the drawing book. The sheriff flipped through it slowly. His face changed. When he reached the page with the pit and the man with the candle, he froze. Then he pulled something out of his wallet, a laminated evidence photo from the original case. A picture of the box found beneath the sycamore. He placed the page next to it. The symbols matched perfectly. That night, they reopened the old case file. They found things they'd forgotten. In the original investigation, there had been a note, one that was never made public. It had been left on the Molsons' kitchen table, written in pen on a piece of torn Bible page. 3 went in, 3 will stay, until the 7th sign breaks the chain. At the time, investigators had written it off as a red herring, maybe some religious rambling from a drifter. But now it seemed connected, and there was something else. The original police photos showed Levi's notebook on his nightstand. How did it end up under the church? Had someone kept it, planted it, or had it never really left? By the end of June, whispers started again in Bower Hollow. A retired janitor who had cleaned the church in the '80s told Father Holden that long before the rec hall was built, there was a trapdoor beneath the pulpit, a passageway that led to a cold storage vault used during Prohibition, and maybe even earlier. He never went down there himself. Said it gave him chills. Sometimes, he said, you'd hear things under the floorboards. Faint voices like kids playing. Holden and Laramie searched for blueprints, records, anything, but most had been lost in a courthouse fire in '78. All that remained were fragments and the drawings. One afternoon in July, as they were closing, The church for the day. Holden found something else. A new drawing dot taped to the inside of the pulpit dot, same notebook paper. Same handwriting. This one showed 3 children, Levi, Carla, and Nate, standing beside a tree. Beneath the tree, an arrow pointed down. Beside it, written in all capital letters, "The roots remember." The tree dot, the sycamore dot, the same one. Where they'd found the box in 9-1 dot by dusk, they were digging beneath its roots again, not with shovels this time, but carefully, slowly. About 2 feet down, they found something solid, a flat wooden plank, and underneath it, something that would bring everything they thought they knew crashing down. But that was only the beginning. The plank beneath the sycamore's roots wasn't new. It was weathered, the edges chipped, soaked dark from decades of soil and rain. Sheriff Laramie knelt, brushing away the last layer of packed dirt, revealing 2 rusted hinges and a metal ring in the center. Father Holden stood back, hands shaking, sweat rolling down his neck despite the coolness of the early evening. "Jesus!" Laramie muttered. "It's a trapdoor." Holden just nodded. His voice had left him. With a groan, the sheriff pulled the ring. The hinges squealed. The door cracked open an inch, and the smell that came out stopped them cold. Not rot, not gas, but something musty, sharp, earthy, and old, like the scent of a forgotten place. They lowered a flashlight into the hole. The beam revealed a narrow wooden ladder descending into the dark. It looked hand-carved, as if someone had made it generations ago, with tools too blunt and time too short. "You think this was a cellar?" Laramie asked. Holden stepped closer. "Or something else?" With no backup, no warning, and no explanation, they climbed down. The tunnel beneath the sycamore led them under the hillside. The walls were dirt reinforced by thick beams, some cracked. Others bowed from the weight above. The path stretched forward for 30, maybe 40 feet, before opening into a small chamber carved into stone. The room was low-ceilinged, damp, and silent dot in the center. A stone slab, on it, 3 small objects. A child's shoe, a pair of reading glasses, and a silver bracelet etched with the name Carla. Holden gasped. "That's hers, I remember. Ruth Harvey said she wore it every day. Birthday gift." Laramie swallowed hard. So it's true, they were brought here. But where were the bodies? Where were the families? Behind the slab was something stranger, a wall covered in markings. Not carved words, but painted symbols. Circles, triangles, squares, some overlapping, some inverted. Beneath them, numbers. 6 dates. All in 1991. June 9th, 12th, 15th, 18th, 21st, and 24th. The last one was circled in red. Laramie reached for his notebook. June 24th. That's 2 weeks after they disappeared. What happened on that date? Holden didn't answer. He had moved to the far wall, where a wooden crate sat half buried in dirt. It was locked with a rusty latch, and when he forced it open, a cloud of dust exploded into the air. Inside were dozens of old documents, handwritten pages. Some dated back to the 1930s. Others were more recent, typed police reports, photos, and even maps. And then, at the bottom, a single manila folder labeled "The Agreement." They opened it on the stone slab. Inside were 7 pages. Typewritten, formal, eerie. It was a covenant and agreement between a man named Father Clement Abel, priest of St. Luke's in 1948, and someone simply referred to as the overseer. The contract referenced something called the Watch Below. It stated that every 40 years on the summer solstice, an offering would be made to preserve the balance between land and town. The offering would consist of 3 full families, taken at the height of light before the 7th cycle breaks. Father Holden blinked in disbelief. This is madness." Laramie flipped the last page. A signature, Clement Abel. Written in thick, dark ink. Next to it, 3 red thumbprints. Children's thumbprints. Holden staggered back. Clement was my predecessor. He retired in '74, died the same year. He never mentioned this. Never. Maybe he couldn't, Laramie said, or wasn't allowed. They looked at each other, and that's when they heard it. Footsteps from the tunnel, but they hadn't told anyone they were here. They turned off the flashlight, waited. The steps came closer, slow, deliberate. Gravel shifting, wood creaking. Then silence. Holden whispered, "Is someone?" Before he could finish, a voice echoed softly down the tunnel. A woman's voice. "Father Holden." They froze. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't a shout. It was familiar. Holden's heart nearly stopped. He recognized that voice. It was Lorraine Dunn, Bill Dunn's wife. Missing since 1991. But it couldn't be. She'd be what? In her 60s? And that voice. It sounded the same. Young. Calm. He stepped into the tunnel with the flashlight. Nothing. He walked forward, just past the last beam. Laramie followed. But the passage was empty. Only silence remained. They climbed out into the fading daylight, faces pale, lungs tight. Laramie shut the trapdoor and stood on it, trying to make sense of what they'd just seen. "Someone's messing with us," he muttered. "Has to be. Maybe some local nutjob found those old reports, staged all this." Holden nodded slowly, but he was still holding Carla's bracelet in his hand. And that wasn't staged. Back at the rectory, they spread out the documents. Among them, they found old attendance rosters from 1951. 3 families missing that year, too. No investigation, no headlines. Just moved away, written beside each name in the town registry. "Every 40 years, Holden whispered. "It happened before." Laramie looked at the dates again. And 2009 would be the next cycle. This year, they locked eyes. "But there haven't been any new disappearances," Holden said. The sheriff was quiet for a long time. Maybe that's the problem. 2 days later, Father Holden woke to find his door ajar. On the steps of the church, wrapped in wax paper and tied with string, sat a single object, a butter cookie, exactly like the ones the children had eaten on the church hill that day in 1991. Beneath it, another drawing. This one showed 3 houses again, but now the roofs were gone. And from each house, a stick figure had risen into the sky. Their arms were outstretched, not in fear but in praise. At the bottom, "They chose us. We stayed, and now we choose again." By the weekend, the town was buzzing. Rumors of strange lights behind the church at night. Voices heard in the woods. A farmer reported finding his fence torn down, the gate open, his son's school backpack gone from the porch. Nothing stolen. Nothing broken. Just gone. Holden called Laramie again. "We're not done," he said. "Not even close." Laramie's voice on the line was hoarse. "There's something else." "What?" "I checked the cemetery records," he said. "There's no grave for Father Clement. He wasn't buried here. No obituary. No death certificate." Holden frowned. "Then where is he?" The sheriff hesitated. "I think he never left." And so, they returned once more to the roots. To the church. To the shadows that had waited decades for someone to look again. Because some secrets don't stay buried. They wait. The church library smelled of old paper and floor polish. Father Holden sat surrounded by yellowed ledgers, parish directories, and brittle handwritten sermon notes dating back nearly a century. Outside, the summer cicadas buzzed in the trees, loud enough to drown out thought. He'd spent hours searching through St. Luke's archives. Everything he could find about his predecessor, Father Clement Abel. There were plenty of mentions, baptism records, marriage certificates, donations logged. But nothing about his retirement. No farewell notes, no letter to the diocese. Just silence after 1974, and no funeral, which made no sense. A priest who'd served 40 years in one church didn't just vanish from the records without someone noticing. unless someone wanted it that way. That evening, Holden and Sheriff Laramie met again at the rectory. Laramie brought a cardboard box, labeled Sheriff's Department, closed cold cases that he'd retrieved from a dusty back shelf at the station. Inside were reports from 1951, faded, typed on onion skin paper, all related to the disappearance of 3 families, the Grangers, the McNeils, and the Hodges. The similarities were chilling. All 3 families attended St. Luke's. All vanished within a 2-week window in June. All had children. No signs of forced entry or robbery. Just gone. Holden unfolded a brittle page, a witness statement from a schoolteacher, dated June 1951. The Hodges boy, Elias, told me the week before they disappeared that his father had started locking the bedroom door at night. Said he heard voices under the floor. Another report, from the town's only doctor at the time, described a boy from the McNeil family complaining of dreams about a long hallway under the roots. It was happening again. Had always been happening, and no one ever knew. Or worse, no one wanted to know. The next morning, Holden woke early and walked to the cemetery behind the church. The mist was low on the grass, and the birds had only just begun to stir. He passed rows of old gravestones, some cracked, others leaning. From years of frost and settling earth, he found the Abel family plot near the east wall. Father Clement's parents were buried there. So was his brother, lost in the Great War. But there was no stone for Clement. No record of burial. Just a gap. He knelt, brushing dirt from the small cement marker next to the plot. It was blank. No name, no date. Just a plain slab, maybe 4 feet long. A child's grave. Something about that space chilled him. He returned to the rectory. Heart heavy. Later that day, a woman knocked on the church office door. She was maybe in her 60s, dressed plainly, with silver hair pinned back and worn hands. I heard about the families, she said softly. The ones from back then. Holden motioned her inside. You knew them? She nodded. I was 15. In 1951, my name's Mavis Grady. My cousin was Lily McNeil. She was 10. Holden sat straighter. You remember what happened? She looked down at her hands. I remember the fear. I remember my aunt screaming when they didn't come home. I remember Father Clement saying we had to pray harder. That some storms weren't from the sky. Holden leaned forward. Did he ever say more? She hesitated. There were rumors that he kept a locked room under the rectory. That sometimes in the middle of the night he'd walk behind the pulpit and disappear. Holden felt the hairs on his arms rise. I don't know what happened to those families, Mavis whispered. But I know this, after they were gone, the church never felt the same. It was like something stayed behind. She pulled something from her bag, a page torn from a journal. The paper was old, fragile. The writing was neat. It read, the agreement must hold 3 families, no more, not yet. They must sleep, not vanish, buried, not dead. Until it's time. At the bottom was a signature, See a Clement Abel. That night, Holden returned to the tunnel under the sycamore tree. He needed to see it again, to be sure. Laramie met him there. They carried lanterns this time, shovels, a camera. The trapdoor opened. Easily, the ladder groaned but held. They descended into the dark. When they reached the stone chamber, something was different. The wall of symbols was wet. Fresh paint, or something like it, glistened in the flickering light. Someone had redrawn the shapes, added new ones. And in the center of the wall, in large black script, the cycle begins again. The watch below waits. Holden turned to Laramie. Someone's been down here recently. The sheriff nodded. Maybe they never left. They followed a side tunnel this time, one they hadn't noticed before. Narrower, damp, the air heavier. Passage curved slowly downward, leading deeper under the hill. Then it opened into another chamber. This one had no slab. No symbols. Just beds. 3 of them, rusted iron frames. Thin, stained mattresses. And on the far wall drawings, children's drawings, dozens of them. Pinned to the stone with rusted nails, stick figures, trees, a dog, the church, a blue sky. A family of 3 holding hands. Then, darker drawings, people underground, eyes in the walls. A shadowy man with a collar and a cross. Holden's throat tightened. The last drawing on the wall showed 3 children standing in a circle. Above them, written in childlike scrawl, he said we would wake when it was safe. But it's still not safe. They took photos, bagged samples, called for state police the next day, but when they returned, the chamber was gone, the tunnel collapsed, like it had never existed. The photos were blurry, smudged, the drawings were gone, everything gone, except the bracelet Holden still carried. End. The notebook Laramie had pocketed before they left. In it, one more page. A final drawing. It showed the church, but it was burning. And the last line written below it, when fire comes, the watch below rises. That Sunday, clouds gathered over Bower Hollow. Lightning split the sky. And for the first time in 80 years, the church bell didn't ring. Because Father Holden never made it to the pulpit. Father Holden's disappearance sent a chill through Bower Hollow. He was never late, not in 41 years. Sheriff Laramie got the call at 9:07 a.m. from Marlene Kruger, the church's oldest member. She had arrived early, as always, to dust the pews and set out the hymnals. The rectory door was unlocked, Holden's coffee mug half full on the kitchen counter, coat still on the hook, but the priest was nowhere to be found. Laramie stood in the rectory 20 minutes later, staring at the cold mug. The coffee wasn't more than an hour old. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no broken glass, just absence. The same kind of absence he remembered from June of 1991. The air in the room felt heavier, like it had been disturbed. The pages of Holden's Bible on the desk had been turned, as if caught by a gust, but no windows were open. There was, however, one thing left behind. Folded neatly beside the Bible was a single piece of paper. It was aged, water-stained, and definitely not from any modern printer. On it were the words, "They're not dead, not buried. Just waiting." He told me how to find them. There was no name. But the handwriting, it was Holden's, that same afternoon. The sheriff called in a favor from the state's missing persons unit. Agent Colleen Drexler arrived that evening, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She'd been with the Bureau over 2 decades and had a reputation for solving the unsolvable. She stood in Holden's office, flipping through the priest's journal entries, reviewing the photos from the tunnels. "What you're describing," she said quietly, "sounds like a community pact. Ritualistic containment." Laramie frowned. "You're saying a whole town could be in on this?" "Not the town," she replied. "Just a few people, the kind that keep records, that pass knowledge down." She paused, tapping the old map they had recovered from the tunnel under the Kaboo. "Sycamore. This symbol here, the triangle inside the circle, it shows up in Appalachian protection lore. But it usually refers to keeping something sealed." "Sealed?" Laramie asked. "Like buried?" "No, like conscious but suppressed." Laramie shivered. "That's not better." 2 days later, they found a trail. A hiker, passing through the forest behind the church, reported seeing a strange shape carved into a tree, fresh, not more than a week old. It matched the symbols found in the tunnel. At the base of the tree, disturbed soil. They dug. Only a foot down, they uncovered a wooden box wrapped in black oilcloth. Inside, pages, torn from what looked like a prayer journal. The writing was frantic. Ink smeared. Desperate. It was Holden's again. "I saw them. God help me. Carla hasn't aged. Neither has Levi. Nate asked me where his parents were. They don't know. They've been gone for 18 years. There were more pages, more drawings, crude images of children in rooms with no doors, a man watching from behind walls, an altar, a candle, and a black door. On one page, just 5 words, "He lives." Below the chapel. Laramie stared at the note for a long time. "That's under the altar," he whispered. The next morning, they began tearing up the floor. Agent Drexler got special clearance. No media, no backup. Just a controlled team of surveyors and forensic archaeologists from Charleston. Under the chapel, they found a void, a hollow cavity sealed in concrete, roughly 15 feet by 15. There were no architectural records of any such space. Breaking through the floor took all day. When they finally lowered a camera into the opening, the screen went static. So Drexler climbed in herself. The space was unlike anything they had seen. Stone walls, symbols carved deep into the mortar. Bones embedded into the corners, not whole skeletons but fragments, fingers, ribs, jawlines. And then, the sound. Soft, repetitive. Dripping. Drexler turned the flashlight slowly. In the far corner was a wooden chair. On it sat a figure, unmoving, head slumped, hands bound to the arms of the chair. The body was mummified, skin stretched taut, collar still intact. Around its neck hung a cross, and in his right hand was a quill pen etched in the stone behind him were the words, "The watch below is mine to hold. I broke the cycle once. Forgive me." Agent Drexler stepped closer, lifting the flashlight toward the figure's face. It was him, Father Clement, able, preserved by the air, entombed, but not decomposed. In his lap sat a final journal. They brought it out in silence, the journal's first entries were dated 1947. It chronicled the building of the chamber, the selection of the watch families, and the warnings given to him by the overseer. It was written like a manual, a guide, but as the years passed, the writing changed. It became more personal, more tormented. He described dreams, visions, children knocking at his door at night, the feeling of being watched during Mass, shadows moving in the rafters, and then, in 1991, the seal weakened. "I was gone. Holden never knew. He was innocent. But they returned. I begged them not to take more, but I had broken the covenant." The final page was nearly unreadable, scribbles, crossed out lines. One phrase repeated over and over, "Do not go below. Do not go below. Do not go below." That night, Sheriff Laramie sat alone in his office, staring at a wall of photographs, old, new, yellowing. He looked at the smiling faces of the Dunns, the Harveys, the Molsons, and now, Holden. Vanished. He pinned Father Clement's photo. Beside them, 7 people. All gone. No trace, just pages, whispers, drawings, and one hollow truth. He poured a glass of bourbon and finally allowed himself to say it aloud. "They're not dead." The radio on his desk crackled. A dispatcher's voice came through, shaky. "Sheriff, we got a call. Someone says there's a girl standing in the church parking lot. Claims her name is Carla Harvey." Laramie stood. The glass fell from his hand. Sheriff Laramie drove fast, faster than he had in years. The road between the station and St. Luke's curled through thick woods and empty farmland. The evening light had gone gray, and the clouds above Bower Hollow threatened rain. As he pulled into the gravel lot beside the chapel, the first drops hit the windshield. She was standing by the steps. Still, completely still. She wore a faded denim jacket with a patch on the sleeve, MTV 1990, and sneakers too white for the dirt beneath her feet. Her jeans were high-waisted. Her face was unmistakable. Carla Harvey, 17 when she vanished, and still 17. She looked exactly like her photo. Not older, not different, exactly the same. Laramie stepped out of the car slowly, palms out. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Carla?" She looked up. Her eyes were blue, wide, soft, but something was wrong. They weren't confused or scared. They were calm. Too calm, like she had just walked out of school. Like she hadn't missed a single Sunday. "Sheriff," she said. Her voice was quiet. "Steady. I was told to come back." He swallowed hard. "Who told you?" She blinked slowly. The man below. Inside the church, Agent Drexler met them, flashlight in hand, voice tight with disbelief. She checked Carla's pulse, temperature, pupil response. All normal, healthy, no signs of malnutrition or trauma, but no signs of time either. She had no ID, no phone, no memory of where she'd been. "I was here," she kept saying. "I was waiting with Nate and Levi." "Where are they now?" Drexler asked gently. Carla didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the sanctuary, at the altar, at the trapdoor they had resealed only a day earlier. Then she whispered, "They can't stay asleep forever." Back at the sheriff's office, Drexler called in a medical team. Carla sat in the observation room, sipping from a paper cup of orange juice, legs crossed, hands folded in her lap, polite, composed, like a girl waiting for a ride home from the dentist. She asked about her parents once, and when Drexler told her, carefully, softly, that they had never come back, Carla simply nodded. "They weren't meant to," she said. "That wasn't their part." Laramie leaned into the glass. "She's not lying," he murmured. "She believes all of this." Drexler nodded slowly. "Or worse, she doesn't just believe it. She knows." That night, while the nurses stepped out of the room, Carla took a pencil from the table and began to draw. The first image, the church. The second, the sycamore tree. The third, a long tunnel, with 3 children walking through it hand in hand. On the 4th page, she drew a circle. Inside the circle was a figure, tall, dark, with a collar and a cross. Behind him, 6 smaller figures. And above them, in looping block letters, the 7th must choose. When Laramie asked her what it meant, she looked up for the first time in hours and said, "You broke the cycle, Sheriff. You opened the door. Now the choice comes to you." The next morning, Carla was gone. No security footage. No exit alarms. Just an empty cot. And a folded drawing left on the pillow. It showed the church burning. Beneath it, a boy's face. Laramie recognized him instantly. Nate Dunn. He was 7 when he disappeared. They found the boy that evening. Just before sunset. A call came in from a farmer outside town. Something about a child standing near the grain silo, not moving, no shoes, covered in dirt. No idea how he got there. It was Nate, still 7, still wearing the red T-shirt from the missing person's photo. He said nothing, just held out his hand and gave Laramie a folded paper. Inside was a single sentence. "The watch below said we're almost ready." In the days that followed, Levi Molson returned to found walking barefoot along the creek bed. Smiling. He held a notebook. His drawings, like before, of trees, tunnels, and eyes watching from walls. But now he added something new, a clock. And over the same time, 3:17. When asked why, Levi simply said, "That's when the bell will ring." No one knew what he meant, but Father Holden had disappeared at 3:17 p.m. on the day he was supposed to lead Mass. The town of Bower Hollow began to turn inward. Locals whispered in stores. People stopped going out after dark. At night, the church lights flickered. A deputy posted to monitor the grounds called Laramie at 2 a.m. one night. Panicked. "I saw someone at the altar," he said. "He was wearing a cassock, holding a candle." "There's no one inside," Laramie said. "I saw him, I swear." The sheriff and Agent Drexler met again in the rectory. They laid out everything. 7 people had vanished. Now 3 children had returned, each unchanged, each bearing messages, warnings. They returned to the tunnel again, under the sycamore. Only now, the path went deeper. Tunnels that hadn't existed before, seemed carved fresh through the dirt. They followed them carefully, marking with chalk, measuring every turn. And then, the scent returned. Old air, dry, cold dot at the bottom. They reached a chamber, not stone this time, but wood walls, floor, and beams. Like a hidden room built inside the earth dot, and at the center, a chair, the same one Father Clement had sat in. Only, now it was empty. On the seat, a single note. The seventh must go below willingly, or the rest will rise. Agent Drexler looked pale. Laramie just stared at the paper. What the hell does that mean? She met his eyes. It means this town made a deal it never truly understood. He looked around the room. The symbols. The drawings. The whispers that had come back to life. Then slowly, Laramie realized something he hadn't considered. 7 people had vanished. 3 had returned, 4 had not. And he was the 7th. The night was still, not quiet, but still. Kind of stillness that settles just before something ends. Or begins again. Sheriff Laramie stood alone inside St. Luke's, flashlight beam sweeping slowly across the pews. The sanctuary hadn't changed in decades. Same stained glass windows. Same wooden cross above the altar. Same floorboards that creaked in the exact same spots, but the air felt different now. Thicker, more aware. He stopped at the 3rd row. Left side, the row where the Dunns used to sit. The Harveys. The MOLSONS dot, and now, empty again. Agent Drexler stayed behind at the station. She'd argued with him earlier. You shouldn't go alone. I have to, he said. I think that's the point. What if it's a trap? He had paused then, looking out the office window. Toward the tree line. What if it's not? He descended beneath the altar for the final time just after midnight. The trapdoor groaned open. The tunnel breathed out cold. He carried nothing but the flashlight and Father Holden's old journal. The pages smoothed and reread so many times they now felt like cloth. The tunnel had changed again. New branches. Deeper twists. It was as if the place itself were alive, expanding, shifting, waiting. Then came the chamber, the wooden one, same as before, except now. The chair was occupied, not by a priest, not by a child, by a mirror, an old one. Cracked in 3 places, hanging from a beam, and carved into the frame, faced the watcher. He stepped closer. In the reflection. The tunnel behind him was empty. No lights. No movement. Just his own face. But as he stared, something changed. The mirror shimmered, subtly, like heat off pavement, and another face emerged. A child, wide-eyed, freckled, familiar. It was Nate. Dunn, then Carla, then Levi, their faces flashing. Like memories. Then Holden's, pale, worn. Then Clement's, gaunt and sorrowful. Then finally, his own again, but younger. Much younger. And behind that reflection, a figure appeared, tall, collar visible. Shadowed eyes, the overseer. Laramie stepped back. A sound echoed behind him. Not footsteps, but breathing. Deep. Labored. He turned. Nothing. Just earth. Then, a voice. You are the 7th. He spun toward the sound. No one there. But the voice was close, inside his head. You broke the seal. You found the watch. You must carry it now. He raised the journal. I didn't choose this. You opened the door. That is choice enough. He trembled. What happens if I refuse? Silence. Then, they all rise. Back at the surface, Drexler waited. She paced the chapel floor, radio crackling in her pocket. Then she heard it. The bell. It rang once. Then again. 3 times. Laramie stepped out of the trapdoor just before dawn. His face was pale. Eyes distant. He said nothing. Just walked to the pulpit and sat. Hands folded. Waiting. The next week. Something shifted in Bower Hollow. The children. Carla, Nate, Levi, vanished again. No signs. No notes. Just 3 small drawings left on the church. Steps. Each one the same, a circle, a triangle, a square. And the words, "The watch is safe again." Laramie changed after that. He didn't return to the sheriff's office. Didn't go home. He lived in the rectory. Now. Alone. Every Sunday, he rang the bell 3 times, then sat in the 3rd pew. Left side. No sermons. No hymns. Just silence. The town didn't ask questions. They simply let it be, like they had before. A year later, Agent Drexler returned. Just once. She sat beside him in the church. They didn't speak, but as she stood to leave, she asked one question. "Did you see them?" He nodded slowly. "Yes." "And were they alive?" He hesitated. Then said, "They weren't dead." That night, Drexler left Bower Hollow for good. She mailed one final letter to the bureau. Inside, photos, notes, and a single hand-drawn map. She titled the file, "The Watch Below, Restricted Access Only." Then sealed it and burned her copy. Years passed. Sd. Luke still stands. So does the sycamore. And every summer, on June 9th, someone leaves 3 bouquets on the chapel steps. Tied in string. No card. No name. And every time the wind blows through the trees, it carries something faint. Something that almost sounds like children laughing, or maybe remembering, or maybe waiting.